Hello everyone, welcome to Coffee Cup Enlightenment. Today I'm going to talk about who are you and how do I get started on this? Who are you is just silent awareness. It doesn't do anything. Um, it's important to understand and realize that pretty much from birth we come into this world as just silent awareness. There's no associations yet. There's no sense of personal identity or individual identity yet, and ultimately, individual sense of identity is an illusion, which is constructed out of ideas. It's a bag of ideas. At birth, you're given an empty bag, and while it's taught by society and your surroundings of what ideas go into this bag, it's somewhat part of the consciousness that you are that wants to associate with things as well. You don't know yourself as just silent awareness, so there is a slight tendency to want to develop a personal, individualized identity that's constructed out of a bag of ideas. So the first idea that goes into this bag is your name, and probably even prior to that is the words I, me and my, and it's the awareness that looks at these bag of ideas. It is not it. So, and then as the years accumulate, more and more ideas get thrown into this bag that forms a sense of individualistic self. And again, just another reminder, you're not an individual. There's no need for you to be an individual. You are the awareness of the individual bag of ideas. So it's just, it's unquestioned, and the greatest assumption on this planet that who we are is an individual. That's personal and unique, and this is a complete illusion, complete lie. Everything, language, the entire conceptual language is structured for this personal, individualized identity, and it's pretty much this bag of ideas that speaks on our behalf. It makes judgments on our behalf. It creates emotions on our behalf, and then it processes and deals with these emotions on our behalf. All along, the awareness sits still in the background and knows, is quiet and silent. And this comes to the question, who are you? Who am I? You are that quiet, still awareness in the background. And also note that without this awareness, nothing would exist. You are like the lights on switch. You are consciousness itself, pure consciousness. That is your root identity and your only identity. And in that identity, it is possible to actually operate in this world perfectly fine. I've mentioned this in videos before, but it's like the ancient American Indians used to bring up their children with no words, no concepts for about 18 years in the attempt not to give the consciousness a bag of ideas to associate with, to create this personalized individual identity, which is a fiction, and then have this individual bag of ideas run the life of the consciousness. And that's what's going on in the world today. You got 7 billion still awareness, consciousness associating with a bag of ideas, and it is the bag of ideas that is running all their lives. Um, and when you realize you are the still awareness that's looking at the bag of ideas, and the bag of ideas disappears and dissolves because there's no more association with it, then that's unplugging from the matrix. And you'll find that you don't need to be a personalized, have your sense of identity wrapped up in individualism. Um, it's useful to maybe have a name in this society. So maybe if you're interacting with someone, maybe at the office, instead of someone calling out, hey, consciousness, who's standing next to the photocopier, can you please pass me the stapler? Maybe it might be much more easier to say, hey Sally, can you pass me the stapler? So yeah, so maybe it's not too uh, it's beneficial maybe to give yourself a name, and also to realize when you realize a name, what is a name? Like say Peter, Peter. So I am Peter. If you look at it closely, it's just sound. And what if this body was deaf? Would I still be Peter? So it's a concept, and whatever goes into this bag, even if it's positive ideas predominantly, or predominantly negative ideas, that makes up this individualistic identity. Both the ideas are false because they're just ideas. And this is very important to realize, because otherwise you'll be continually in a state of re-identification. That this bag of ideas, it has judgments on our behalf. So as we're interacting with the world, it's got a mental inner commentary. So it's the voice in the head, it's the chatter. So pretty much all day this is going on along with you. This bag of ideas is giving commentary to the world, and through enlightenment you can use this first aspect, the chatterer, and step back and look at that. Bring awareness and sense yourself as the observer to this chatterer. So every point that the bag of ideas expresses itself is an opportunity for self-realization, self-actualization, to recognize yourself as this silent awareness. And again, don't let the bag of ideas make ideas about the word silent awareness. That's just, again, just creating a delay that eventually your awareness will see that it's not necessary to do such a thing, to create ideas about, I've just given it a word, silent awareness, but you can give it anything. You can call it the knower in the background, if that doesn't create any triggers for your bag of ideas. Call it the observer. I am the observer of everything. I am not anything. I am not any bag of ideas. I am not any sense of individualistic, no matter how amazing this individualistic idea is. And also, notice the massive striving, especially for kids aged around probably like 13 to like 26, probably. There's a tremendous, maybe less than 13, maybe about 12, maybe 11 even. Sometimes it starts a bit younger. The massive tendency for the awareness to create itself as an association occurs. It's just, it wants to build some sort of individualistic identity, whether it wants to be a hipster, it wants to be a whatever, a ballerina image, it wants to be a gang image, but all the images are just that, images. It's a bag of ideas that sits in our mind's eye, and it's speaking every single word. It is feeling, not us. And this brings up to the other point, is that who we are as whatever you want to call it, observer, consciousness, it's untouchable. It's never, ever, 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 ever been touched, ever. Um, it's it's the awareness of the touched one, which is the bag of ideas. It's the bag of ideas which constantly is in a roller coaster of emotions and is being touched and affected every single day. And our awareness is looking at this bag of ideas. And if you can sense and feel yourself as the awareness of the touched character that lives in the mind's eye, that you are looking at that touched character, then you're starting to feel the true essence of who you are, which is that silent observer. And then you'll also discover that you are untouchable. And then it's like, there's a big aha moment that it's just, it's just a big joke. But it has a massive pull, this person identity. Everything in this world is designed for it. Everything. It's just, there's so much assumption. That's the greatest assumption on this planet Earth, is who we are as an individual, and a unique expression, and all these terms. But what you must realize is the bag of ideas is probably conjuring ideas now and saying, I don't want to be this boring, oh, who am I? I am consciousness. Oh, who am I? I am conscious. The same. It's not that at all. The awareness is actually all, you can say, all individual bag of ideas that you can put up, but it's consequenceless identity. It has no consequences to it. So it's the nature that if you're going to associate your identity as a bag of ideas, it's going to create a disturbance always. It's the nature of it to create some form of disturbance, to be in essence disturbed. So, and because it's that disturbance which is pointing you back to be the awareness. So you live in a bottomless pit of disturbance. Not you as consciousness, but you will believe that if you are associated with this bag of ideas, it represents a bottomless pit of disturbance that's never ending, and it's a bottomless pit of never-ending dissatisfaction, and that's not a bad thing. It's meant to be that, because if this bag of ideas was somewhat peaceful and blissful and aware, then there would be no such thing as self-actualization. There is one consciousness and essence as who we are, but it can represent itself as everything. It can maybe spend the most of the day as reserved, you know, pretty reserved, quiet and relaxed, and then when the moment comes for it, it may become very alert and speak very directly. It may get in the mood of being very playful, and there's, whatever, but it's not necessarily in the same way as this bag of ideas does it, because the bag of ideas sort of replicates consciousness in every single way, but it has consequences to it, and it's always disturbed, always dissatisfied, and it's meant to be like that. That's the most. You'll realise it's the most amazing thing for that to be like that, because without that, you would never have something to bring you into self-realization, self-actualization. There's always going to be like a splinter in your mind that tells you that something's not right, And that splinter in the mind is always you being this bag of ideas. Even if you're quite successful in creating a positive bag of ideas, you always have that splinter in the mind saying, no, this isn't it. And that splinter in the mind, again, is perfection. That's, it's appreciate that as well. It'll never go away. You will never, ever, 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 ever fix it. And it's not meant to be fixed. It's designed part of being a false identity, being and associating with a bag of ideas. Leave the bag of ideas alone, and then you'll come into self-actualization more and more. With myself, like I mentioned few years ago, I woke up one morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and all this bag of ideas disappeared. And it actually, the bag of ideas said one last sentence before it went quiet for 1.5 days. So the bag of ideas did come back, and there's nothing I could have done to sort of stop it. But I lived without this bag of ideas for 1.5 days. So I know what it's like. I know there's a 10,000 kilo difference of contrast between living as a bag of ideas and having it totally ripped away and removed. And you realise that what I experienced was that there was no. I just didn't have any of ideas of who I was anymore. I didn't need them, and there was no lack of awareness. There was no reduced levels of consciousness. But what it was felt like was like 10,000 kilograms lifted in an instant, and that bag of ideas screamed out, "How the fuck are we meant to see this?" And the sentence, "How the fuck are we meant to see this?" Again, it's like pulling consciousness in. How are we meant to see this? Like I'm meant to be that commenter saying that sentence. How are we meant to see this? And it was referring to the self-actualization that happened. And so if you can examine that sentence, how are we meant to see this? It's like that's the root essence of the chatterer. That's the heart of the chatterer speaking. And it's speaking as a personal individual saying, we, how are we meant to see this? Like this is a joke. And then it went quiet for like 1.5 days. And it spoke just a little bit that night when I went outside, and the night air started illuminating orange. It said it came back just a little bit, and it said, you probably need to go and see a doctor or something. And then the awareness just come back to stillness again, and realise it's just sense perception. There's nothing wrong with me. I don't feel nothing wrong. And I'm going to talk about bringing the awareness in other aspects of this bag of ideas as well. So the first one was when it's making comments and judgments, and then through its own comments and judgments, it creates an emotion, and then again it's pulling consciousness into an association that it is the one having that emotion. Yet if you look back and realize you are the still awareness, you are looking at that emotional character being affected through its own judgments of the world. So again, through this emotion, this roller coaster of emotions that happens for everyone's experience every single day, it's not you. You can do a meditation, which I've been sort of doing recently. I still have this bag of ideas with me. It's like a hard thing to shake and get rid of. And again, it's even the bag of ideas that wants to get rid of it. So that's where it sort of gets tricky. But I guess the only thing, if you call it that you can do is just surrender to this bag of ideas and observe it, and don't make any commentary to it. If it has disturbances, observe its disturbances, not yours. Observe it. So one meditation I've been doing sort of recently is it's not me. It's sort of like Bart Simpson. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. So whenever there's a commentary, it wasn't me. Whenever there's an emotional response to its own commentary, it wasn't me. It's not me. And And but again, it's not what you do. The method of it's like this method that I'm describing here. Every single method can be done wrongly and rightly. The way I'm describing it, it's done rightly because there's enough awareness in the background that it 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 gets used as a alarm clock reminder to bring me back to awareness, to feeling myself as that awareness, rather than what's actually going on in the foreground with this bag of ideas and its never-ending dramas. Done wrongly, it wasn't me. How could it be done wrongly? The bag of ideas will take on that idea. It wasn't me, and I don't know. It will create some conflict within itself. So, and then it'll the bag of ideas will beat itself up, and then you'll think you're the one that's been beating itself up, and it will feel bad. So that idea, this meditation technique will not work for everyone if there's not enough awareness. And again, mentioning like how I just said there, it beats itself up. It's a very strange, like it's a schizophrenic character. It's making comments to the world, and then it feels emotions to the world, and then it beats itself up for having those emotions, and then it tries to fix the emotions and tries to get itself out of the, like it's insane. It's absolutely mad. And the awareness is just sitting still in the background again, looking at all of this, silent. It's watching it do all of these things. So we've talked about the bag of ideas making judgments, bring awareness to that. The bag of idea creating emotions through its own judgments. Look at that. And then look at the bag of ideas, how it tries to change its actions it does in an endeavour to be at peace, to make itself feel better, which it never ever 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 will, because it's not meant to be. It's a bag of ideas. Bag of ideas can never be who you are. It's because you are who you are. So can you understand how it's meant to be disturbed? So let's go into the third way of, you can use this bag of ideas to your self-actualization, and that is when it tries to do things, so it strives and never arrives, as the term goes, striving and never arriving. Because the arriving, you already are arrived, you are you, awareness. uh, so you can never arrive. You have arrived. You have never departed. That's the cosmic joke. You've never departed, and it's meant to be the bag of ideas that strives and never arrives. So that's bring your awareness to that, and I love to say laugh at that, but again, that form of meditation technique will not work for everyone if the awareness is not rooted enough in itself yet. So for me, I can bring smiling now. So this is something I've been doing for many years to the bag of ideas. When it runs its huge dramas and maybe creates a huge level of depression that would normally drive uh, someone off to jump off a bridge, I can go back into slight memory of the awareness again, and I'll slowly open up the eye of consciousness to this bag of ideas and the deep, dense emotional field, and it explodes and turns into euphoria, and my whole body receives an orgasm from doing that. I've been doing this for years now. Um, um, when I bring consciousness to look and observe directly at the bag of ideas face to face, with no commentary, no judging of it, no wanting to get rid of that bag of ideas, loving that bag of ideas, welcoming it to stay. That's how I feel. That's how this consciousness feels towards it. It wants everything to be as it is, and then bringing that love and wanting this to stay to that bag of ideas and the massive dramas, and it can't survive in that light of self-recognition of yourself as awareness. That's just, and it just all the associations maybe that have some may, believe even that these associations come from lifetimes. There are many lifetimes of accumulation, of association, of bag of ideas that you've been throwing into this bag, and it's just burning it all up. And the release of it is experiences like this weight lifted, and I've mentioned it before in other videos. I call it like a chakra sort of rush or a chakra release, and it's like a warm oil poured up from the base of my spine, and then it pours out at the top of my head. And this was happening since I was a kid. Used to have a couple of those chakra rushes, maybe 3-4 times a year. Just happened spontaneously. Maybe when my awareness went back into self-realization of itself, but didn't know about all of that. And then I could have been just standing in the queue, and all of a sudden this big rush comes up, my tingling on the shoulders and pouring out the head. And it's just more over the years now. I can do it pretty much on a daily basis, and I can do it on command. But I need to have this bag of ideas exposed and present in the foreground first to do it. It's like the returning back to self-awareness that causes that orgasmic feeling. And it's this body's never really taken drugs, but I can imagine it would probably be better than any drug on the street. The feeling from it, it's just like a huge orgasm in the body, tingling shoulders, and it feels beautiful. It's like warm oil being poured up your back. It's like going into a sauna and someone's pouring you're upside down and someone's pouring warm oil down your back, and it's pouring out the top of your head. It feels very beautiful. But this comes from seeing the truth of this false association that has gone on with this bag of ideas. So whenever my awareness brings it, so if you want, try it. But again, everything you do can work and can't work depending on where you are as awareness. So there's no such thing as anything right or wrong. Everything can be used for enlightenment. Everything can be used for non-enlightenment. Can create further associations and personalized individualistic identity, false identity. And it may be at the stage for some people where they don't need to. There's no desire whatsoever. Their bag of ideas doesn't like this video really, and it wants to remain personalized and individualistic, and that's fine. Maybe it's the taste of sweetness of being self-actualized is not ready yet. It's not ready to flower. So this video is not for everyone. I know I can think of few people now that their the bag ideas is so dominant and prominent in their life. It's speaking on their behalf, and they believe it's them having their opinion about this video, and the feelings created. They believe that it's them having the feelings to this video. So you can't do nothing really much. Life will be their teacher until they become to a point of where the disturbance created by that bag of ideas starts to become self-evident for them, and then these type of ideas will become a little bit of an interest. But it's not, I don't know. There's not for everyone. Everyone's got to go through stages of building this bag of ideas and associating with it. But just also imagine imagine a negative bag of ideas and you thinking you're that. So you got two bag of ideas, a negative one and a positive one. Imagine trying to associate with the negative one. Like you actually had a choice in which bag of ideas you would choose. No one would choose it. And then you've got to ask the question, would someone actually choose the positive ideas? If you already are who you are and you're already blissful and you're already the most amazing level of awareness and you're everything and you're all expressions, you can call yourself, you can be any personality that the bag of ideas tends to represent. Why would you choose just even one bag of ideas that eventually gets updated every week? But you're always stuck in that predictable bag of ideas and its predictable responses and its predictable disturbance always, and its predictable never-ending dissatisfaction. But no one would consciously choose that, ever. If you already were who you were, you already knew that you never had departed, and there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to strive to because you are who you are, and you could feel yourself as this 10,000 kilogram weight lifted. All the bag of ideas have lifted. It's just so amazing. It's an amazing feeling. It's like, wow, like I feel so much lighter, but this also feels so normal. It feels so normal and natural and default. That's what it felt like a few years ago when this happened in the morning, when the 10,000 kilos of bag of ideas lifted, and the bag of ideas screamed out, how the fuck are we meant to see this? And then it went quiet, dead quiet, and then I just lived as this awareness, this very blissful light awareness that was very clear, very alert, still had a sense of self, didn't need to be categorized as a particular ideas. And this is also mentioned in some of the other videos, and it's extremely important, extremely important. Which bag of ideas are you? Ask the question. If there's still high levels of convincedness that you are a bag of ideas, are you the current bag of ideas? And of course, the bag of ideas will say to itself, yes. But what about, were you the 20-year-old bag of ideas, the 10-year-old bag of ideas? What happened to them? How can you keep being something non-constant? Are you the 10-year-old bag of ideas, which then gets updated on a weekly basis? Some get deleted, some get added upon. And the basic structure of this bag of ideas, I think psychologists say it's like the basic essence of it starts from 7 years old. So you fill up this bag of the ideas to 7 years old, and that becomes the main foundational structure, and then the rest of it's just surface and superficial. So it gets upgraded from 7 years old onwards. So there's mainly it's this 7-year-old bag of ideas, and whatever's gone in that's actually speaking on your behalf for the rest of your life. The goal of life is see if you can actually rid your association with this bag of ideas, and see what it's like to live without it. And there's no one doing that, because again, it's the bag of ideas, which is noticed as the spiritual ego that does this, and that's something. Use that for meditation. The spiritual ego. Everyone knows it after a while, because it tends to, if there is a strong interest in these type of videos and this type of stuff of self-awareness, everyone knows it's very common that the bag of ideas tends to join you in this endeavor. It says, yeah, this is a good idea, let's get enlightened. And but it keeps you associated as a bag of ideas. And this is a necessary process too, until your awareness sees, that's not me either. I don't need to be enlightened, I am enlightened. There's nothing to, and there's no one getting rid of anything, or it's just that, a bag of ideas. So I think this video's nearly finishing soon, but yeah, but I think I've pretty much felt like my bag of ideas has pretty much mentioned what it wants to mention, and also consciousness has mentioned what it wants to mention, and that's the way the play goes at the moment. There's a bit of both. There's always that rootedness in the background of me as awareness, and there's still this bag of ideas playing out. Another way, there's unlimited ways for self-actualization. Another way is actually want to be the bag of ideas. Go the opposite direction. I am the bag of ideas, but you know it in the background, and it's funny. So it's like you're an actor putting on a costume. Be the bag of ideas, and be its dramas. And that's why watching television shows that overemphasize this bag of ideas in the characters, it's so funny. The funny is the releasing of our own associations with our own bag of ideas by looking at exaggerated forms of bag of ideas in movies and TV series. So, sometimes even when your bag of ideas is in a disturbed mode, if you say, I want to be even more disturbed, that's another method I do, is I go, all right, I recognise, yes, the bag of ideas is in disturbed mode again, and it's created its own judgments and its own dramas, and then I say, I want to be even more this drama and more this emotion, and that just causes it to explode and turn into euphoria again. So that's, again, that method can be used wrongly and rightly. It can be used to accentuate even further the bag of ideas, or it can be used to do, the way I do it is to um, create further disassociation and dissolvement of the bag of ideas. So I actually want to be it even more, because I know I'm so rooted in being that in this moment that I can go into even the worst of its own drama, and then it actually becomes so funny, because I be the absolute nightmare that all bag of ideas normally want to run away from, and I be it, and I go into it, and I can see it's just emotions of the bag of ideas. It's not personal, and then it causes it all to explode and shatter into a rain of euphoria, and a lightness of weight to be felt at the same time, a shedding of this weight of luggage. And that's what the bag of ideas is. It's excess luggage, but necessary luggage in the greater picture. It's all necessary, um, because we come into this world with no sense of self-recognition yet. We are who we are as silent awareness. We're this clean slate when we come into this world. We're our original default identity when we come in this world. But you can say we do absorb, even in the womb, probably, some associations that are energetic based. And that's why some babies cry more than others, even though the bag of ideas hasn't developed yet. Um, you pretty much, on an energetic level, not just a conceptual level, the bag of ideas exists on an energetic level as well, which is non-lingual and non-conceptual. And that's the language the animals speak. They can smell, the dog can smell the fear as you're walking past, and will bite the body that you're in if that's what's happening. So animals don't have words and concepts. Definitely do not create a bag of ideas that built out of words and concepts for themselves. No animal in the animal kingdom does. And that's another contemplation and meditation. Look at the entire animal kingdom. Notice the birds, the seagulls, in the park. They haven't called themselves Harry and Sally. They don't have any personalized individual identities. But it's interesting to see they do have certain, you know, you got the dominant one and the more sort of placid one, amidst the pack, and that repeats itself all over the world. Doesn't matter where you're watching seagulls, they're all the same, and they're all playing the games where one of them just starts screaming at the other seagulls over the chip, who over protecting the chip, and it doesn't even want the chip, but it likes to squeal at the other ones because it wants to say, "That's my chip, it's my chip." And yeah, but um, so you can say, animals, then they have certain, I don't know, you can say personalities, even though they don't have a bag of ideas, but they will take on the energetic level of the personal owner. So if the personal owner is emitting their bag of ideas, not the person, is emitting anxiety, then the dog will take on that. So the dogs are almost they're like a sponge to absorb our falsehoods. They swallow up our falsehoods like sponges, so they can help you live a little bit longer in that way. Because all bag of ideas ultimately cause sickness and disease. The only destiny, ultimately, if you keep building this bag of ideas, is murder, disease, and suicide. They're the three outcomes of the bag of ideas. It has no other outcome. It hates itself. It's not you that hates yourself, because you're the silent awareness of the character. But it hates itself ultimately. It doesn't want itself. It doesn't want everything. It's in a mad relationship with everything. But it's meant to be like that because it's the expression of falsehood. Why would you want the expression of falsehood to represent clarity and peace? It can never do that. It doesn't make sense. False equals madness, and reality of who you are equals truth, I guess, or truth equals, you know. clarity and peace, and falseness equals madness. It's meant to be, but it's not you that's ever mad. And even in deep mad states of the bag of ideas that's in, many people have awoken, especially during this stage, because the bigger the bag of ideas is, the more contrast there is between you and it. So if you only got a tiny little bag of ideas that you're associated with, it's almost like you can't use it as a springboard for self-actualization. It's almost like the bag of ideas and the dysfunction of the bag of ideas needs to be quite high before contrast and distinction occurs between you and it. And then if your awareness realizes, hey, I'm not that. So I can see now over the years that I'm 40 years old now and I'm 50, and I see it's just a continually changing bag of ideas, and my awareness is starting to realize, hey, I'm not that. And if I'm not that, I'm awareness. Awareness. And then all of a sudden the weight gets lifted. Oh my God, I'm awareness. I don't need to be any bag of ideas. That's all, folks. Thank you.